Um, let me let me change this. Give me a second. What the fuck? Okay, this should go in the middle. Yeah, something like. What, what is the middle, bro? Middle? Uh, oh my. Okay, there it is. Wait. Start. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Oh yes. Here we are. 1 minute late, almost. But that's that. Hello, 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 Savannah. Welcome, welcome. Here we are. Another night. It seems. Um, let me. Okay, I can close this. Uh, Something interesting to say, but what? Amazing. Something recommendable, I feel nice. So let me say that. Also, I knew I was forgetting stuff. Let me. Okay, let me carry this from here to here. Yeah. So. Hmm, this. Mhm. Okay, this is working. Okay, so far I have the most necessary things set up. I think I will guess if I am not wrong. Okay, okay. Have a nice one, Ren. I hope. I I think yeah, it is kind of problematic to realize that there is such a difference between times. But I mean, it is kind of a great reminder. I will say so, taking into consideration that it is so late for you on your end when I go live. Oh man, but I don't know. I don't know. I I wouldn't say it as oh no, time to live. Ah. Let me see. Okay, how much time do we have left? 7 minutes. I did everything that I had to do and like okay. I know why. Because I was still forgetting stuff. That's why. And we have that. Now what's that kind of boss? What I am forgetting? Yeah. Let me see. Let me see. We're already on day 13. What? We're already on day 13. Amazing. Okay, I can make this. Can scale this. Something else. I should put this with some sound just in case. Oh, I think I can. I could try to eat a little bit of something before we really go live, as they would say. I don't know. What else? Okay, we have some more time yet. So amazing, I will say. So this is okay. There it is. Oh, we're done basically. I will say. I will guess. I will believe. I will want to believe. very fun. I finished with everything once again before run, run time out. The opposite. Time run out. So we're ready for this. I would say. Um, Not that much more to add. ah, let me see. And wow, here we are. Basically, here we find ourselves once again gathered, ready for the challenges that are to come and for the things that we have to do. So, so far, we have, yeah, we have lost the streak. I didn't pull myself together yesterday enough to be capable of streaming, sadly, I will guess. But here we are today. That's what matters the most. That at the very least, I didn't miss, I guess, 2 days in a row. But anyways, it isn't only me who's present, and it isn't only my efforts who are being rewarded, as they will say, because certainly this is certainly important, yeah, but it also has the other value, that is the value of seeing that not only I am trying, but others are allowing this to keep happening and are having their interest on this. So, certainly, hello everybody. As I said before, hello lurkers, hello world watchers, hello, hello viewers, hello everyone, hello people, hello, and in particular, today, hello Savannah. As I kind of said before, hello. Here we are, basically, not that much more to really add. And, well, so far, yeah, it has been a very crazy week. I I guess we, after so long, we find ourselves back to this place, and we keep doing things that we had been kind of um, delaying. Yeah, that's the word. We have been delaying things, and we didn't really create a backlog of them. It simply happens that the more we delay everything, the more we will have to take in our hands in the future. So nice to see that we are here now, and now also nice to see that we can return to work on those mm, unattended tasks, I will say. And well, it it has been since the last occasion of this. I could have checked, yeah. Let me see. I think I can still check now. Probably. Let me. Yeah, I can check here. Because it was like. Since the last occasion of us studying one of these lessons, it was like. Here. It was almost. How long? What? 2 weeks? What? Yeah, I guess. I guess it takes me sometimes. Oh man. Well, yeah, it was 2 weeks since the last time that we studied anything like we are going to do here today. But it still is interesting to see that we're back and to notice that also we can. The most important thing, no? Mm, Put the efforts into doing this. In this particular occasion, although I will say that it isn't completely sad, but it's noticeable that we have the thingy of this one lesson is very short. I will guess if I had to name a probable cause for this, that the video is full of copyright, like one of the other very short lessons was, I remember. So we will have some problems to deal with that in regards to that, sadly. And well, it still is nice. And also, hello, Memento. I hope you're doing well. And welcome. But yeah, basically that. It will be kind of, not simply kind of hard, but rather kind of, kind of complex to see what it will be the real reason for this one to be so short. And even if it is short, we're going to try and maximize as much as we can the learnings from out of it. As well, I don't know. I think I shouldn't over focus that much on what I have heard before of people needing to pause what I am saying and all of that to really keep up with with what is going on. I can't beat those allegations. I can. I didn't really expect to produce anything that was quote unquote high on educational level. I don't think so that it is like that at all, but it might be more of a problem of me not properly pronouncing stuff and making it so hard to follow what I am saying and such. Probably. I don't really know. I don't have the cause at hand for situations like this one. But anyways, um, I will say yeah, we might as well simply try and go into this as yeah. We will see. We will have to see and we will have to experience which part of this in particular is kind of the problem for us to have to skip directly. Yeah, to skip into the conclusion of the lecture. So let me here it is at the end. Yeah, I said that I set up editing at the end. This one particular thing I forgot. That is to capture this thing. Okay, there it is. So, with that being said, now for real, um, transition into this. But after that, no, before that, sorry, let me. What should it be? Something like that, I guess. So yeah, here we are. This one has this. What's the name? Timestamps. No, chapters. That's their official name, chapters. So we can directly skip into the first chapter or the real starting point of the lesson itself, lecture, whatever. So yeah, here we are. Just in case, a little bit of context, background context for for the record. Back into MIT lessons, observing the whole course on the introduction to psychology and what it is about and all of that. In the title, it is that this one in particular is lecture 17, so it should be no problem to follow what this one is about. I will believe so. Yeah. Well, it says here in reality that this one is also about child development and such. So no further explanations from my end. Um, yeah. I guess we can. Ah, no, wait. This is what I forgot to do. It's this audio. Yeah. Okay. Now we're perfectly ready to start with this. Let's go.
So
Okay.
today's lecture is
Hello.
going to be on child development. How do we go from infancy and
Audio.
head towards adulthood? Next Thursday we'll talk about development after infancy and into
Audio.
adulthood and older age. And this amazing thing about babies and how do they get going and how do scientists discover from babies and young children how their minds are fundamentally different than adults, and how your mind was fundamentally different than it is as an adult. And then the last thing will be a dangerous experiment where my wife will come over with my 2-year-old and my 4-year-old, and we'll try to do a developmental demonstration in front of you. But I should warn you that live children have their own will, so we'll see how that goes, okay? All right. So one thing that people are struck by babies is that babies are cute, okay? And it's not just it's not, it was thought to be not just fun, but kind of maybe a really important biological thing. We talked about motherese before. Sing-song talk to babies that help them learn language. There's something about adults finding babies cute that makes them want to help babies, okay? Parents and friends. I mean, the cuteness is thought to be kind of an evolutionary, reward for dealing with a baby. So, and then people have said, well, what is it that's a little bit different about a baby's face than an adult? They have rounder heads. They have foreheads that protrude more towards the slope back more. They have larger eyes proportionately, smaller jawbones proportionally. And people use the term neoteny to describe this kind of infant proportions or properties of faces, which are universal. And of course, a lot of people discovered this in advertising or cartoons. And so here's an interesting example of how Mickey Mouse has, over the years, from the original version of Mickey Mouse to the current super cute, super tested, super Disney version of Mickey Mouse, has become increasingly neotenized. And how much the cartoonists literally know that, or just have kept saying, what makes it cuter and cuter and cuter, and ended up with a lot of the same proportions in Mickey Mouse's face that make infants so cute and desirable. We don't really know, but the world kind of feels this.
Okay, kind of here. I think that so far it's pretty understandable. The point itself that babies in particular do have these different features that make them be so, it isn't, yeah, I will say attractive in the sense that you can observe how a baby is certainly something that you will not want to harm, but it means that it was mentioned here on a short note, basically, that they have features that are more rounded. I'll going through this whole concept of what was mentioned in one of the classes about you understand what is less spiky, as in obviously more rounded, to say it differently. You observe that and you can comprehend that it is less of a threat when it isn't so disturbingly unappealing to the eyes, let's say. And in this sense, this feature is overall present not only in human babies, it is also something that you can observe in almost any type of newborn that is from the animal realm at the very least, or the big majority of them, I will say, just in case. And it makes sense because you can observe also that is kind of a prerequisite for you to have a chance at surviving instead of wishing, or not wishing, more like not possessing any tool in your hands to defend yourself when it comes to making it, and even more if you're a human baby, making it through the stages of existing without any difficulty or without any aid from external factors. So this whole notion that a baby is cuter and a baby is not simply cuter in the sense what was said before, not simply that it is cute and that wow, it's nice, but also that when you observe something of that level of quote unquote attractiveness, you can in your mind already start to fear that it might as well not be a threat for you. When those features get in properly in place, you can also start to realize that they might as well be beneficially important for the sake of keeping, the possibilities of surviving high. And on one hand, it happens with babies. I will guess it will also get later on mentioned, but yes, just in case, I will also go over it. That is the side that not only babies have these kind of features, but with time, as we grow older and older, and not going from, let's say, from 20 to 30 years old, but rather when you are what we consider in our society an elder, when you become an elder of society, you also gain those qualities in your face, and you also quote unquote get reshaped into something that aligns more with all of these ideas, so that you end up gaining once again these different tools which allow you to exist and to have less problems when it comes when it boils down to securing your own survival by not having to deal with so many situations in nature that expose you to danger. But yeah, it simply happens like that. I guess in a very short manner of explaining all of it. But what's more? Mm, Yeah, I don't think so far I can add that much more. I think because it also has some other sides to it, but they certainly are. They might as well be touched by the lesson itself. So let's keep seeing, I guess. Um, and let's keep simply observing so far.
Even adult research, there's a little funny line of research that says adults who look more baby-faced, okay, get treated a little bit different socially. So so here's Leonardo DiCaprio, and baby-faced adults in experiments are perceived as, just by their faces, as more naive, more honest, more helpless, more kind, more warm, and more, just people think this is going to be a nice, warm person, okay? Guessing from faces. They're using the cues of neoteny. Other studies have found that people who are baby-faced are statistically more likely to be found innocent in cases of intentional wrongdoing. Okay, so whether they're trying to prove that somebody on purpose tried to do something bad, you go, not that cute little person, right? But there's no difference if it's cases that involve negligence, something where you should have done something, because we know babies aren't super responsible for how they behave, right? Okay, so it's kind of like depends on the and they're less likely to receive votes in elections. Okay, so people, I won't even tell you this, but people have done all kinds of analyses of faces that win elections in the U.S. and around the world, and there's two dimensions that people look for: what looks like somebody's empathetic, and what looks like somebody's competent. All right. So you want babies when it's fun, but when you have to figure out how to balance the budget, that doesn't seem like a baby task. Okay? All right. So it's kind of funny, and a lot of voters, go by instincts as well as by sort of facts or stated values. So in the development of infants into adults, the classic debates about how our mind grasps the world have played out yet again in a powerful way. The nature-nurture debate, what's in our genes and gets us going, what's acquired from the environment. Philosophers who say that knowledge starts with innate or genetic or more evolved capacities. Other ones who've emphasized that we pick it up from the world empirically as measuring scientists. So for example, Aristotle wrote that there's nothing in the intellect which was not first in the senses. That's the empirical view, right? It's out there in the world and you solve it, and starting with a blank slate. And in fact, the behaviorists, of course, believed in this with a vengeance in psychology. So Watson wrote, give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, in my own specified world to bring them up, and I'll guarantee to take any of them one at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select: a doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even beggarman and thief. That it's all the environment and a blank slate, and who really knows?
Okay. Um, back one. I think we have a little bit to unpack over here, because certainly not only on this one, um, what is it? I can't remember the name of the word. Presentation? No, image? Kind of something like that. I can't remember that one in particular, but in this image, in this visual thing, we have one concept, and that is certainly that you can train anybody in the sense of, well, I mean, I understand the point that you can believe it is possible to train anybody to realize certain types of tasks, but I also, yeah, I don't fully see how it all transitions correctly from what we were dealing with before, in the sense of babies being detected as less of a threat. I recognize. I mean, yeah, so far they are almost completely different topics, because on one hand you have, okay, what happened before has nothing to do with this simply, and let's leave it at that. Now, with the main topic on hand, you can accept that truly some things come from nature already, and that, for example, when it comes to learning how to walk, you can probably not describe how to walk, because it was a process that you naturally discovered by yourself. That although you ended up receiving some type of aid, almost every single human has developed a very characteristical way to walk in which they know that they can properly do it. Yet, if they had to mm, verbalize what they went through, they might not have the capacity of doing so, because it simply means that you as an individual don't possess the tools proper for, in this case, even being capable of picturing how things that happen unconsciously are real in the world and how they can keep happening, let's say, on one hand, the point of many of the things that happen in the intellect are born first from nature on one hand, because on the other, it also happens that sadly, most of the world needs you to actively, at the very least, um, minor point here, most of the actual world, the present modern world in which humans live, requires you to willingly interact with it and to play a role, an active role in it, to be capable of experiencing all of the things that are requested from the world, yeah, from the world to you to realize, of you, sorry, to realize. And it all ends up meaning that although before you have the capacity of existing without almost any preoccupation whatsoever, when it came down to simply fulfilling the different tasks that were created from going kind of the extra mile when it comes down to exerting yourself in different areas and getting entertained almost. Nowadays, to do more complex tasks, you need to play a conscious active role. But yeah, it isn't simply bad or something negative. It simply happens like that. And with time you also learn that many things can be switched into nature, or yeah, into the natural slash unconscious side of yourself, if you put enough time into them, so that you don't have to in any way whatsoever worry about what is happening, although it might not be the reality for most of the things that you do. But yeah, I don't know, that's kind of it for that I see. And in this case, yeah, the biggest point and the most important one to kind of argue against is this whole idea that as human beings we possess the capacity of being changed into completely anything that we wished to do, or that somebody else might have wished to do also, if it boils down to it. Because we can believe that it is true that with time we have almost no obligation whatsoever to stick to only one type of activity in a sense, but on the other hand, sadly, the real reality is that we're forced almost to not be so empty minded when it comes to trying to realize and trying to play an active role in, yeah, in almost anything that happens when it comes to our own life. And a more comprehensible explanation of that is you don't really get to change your whole life from, from the tiniest of the points to the biggest objective that you have set without having to deal with the consequences of that. And it ends up leading to you also playing not only the, yeah, it isn't a role, playing against what you were before and what you're trying to transition with or into, but also the necessity of dealing with the different consequences that arise from changing habits. And even if you are a baby, what ends up being the reality is that if you want to leave something behind, you have to sacrifice something you not something. You have to sacrifice that one thing for the sake of becoming the new objective that you have set. And if you decide to go for something incredibly challenging, the different objectives that you will have to fulfill, the different transitions that you will have to perform, might as well overwhelm you. Because although as okay, although as bare human beings, we could believe that we have all of the different capacities to perform all and any action whatsoever that we wish to realize with enough training, the sad reality or the most direct one that we have to confront is there are so many other factors at play when it comes to this that if we end up surrendering ourselves against the will of wishing to do what we put into words and what we do say that we supposedly want to do, if we can't subdue the will to stop putting our efforts against that, because even more obviously, in if you consider doing something that is even harder than what you ever expected before, if all of those things are like that, you might as well realize that sadly you have almost no chance at at achieving those goals. And even more with a child, you will not even not that you will not even you shouldn't try to say that they are capable of becoming anything at all if you haven't really given them the chance of properly. I wouldn't. Yeah, it is kind of weird, but if you haven't given them the chance of evolving into a more proper state of their mind in which they can deal with the different challenges of life, you can believe that you can force them to be. The different things that are being mentioned here have different levels of complexity, and I will believe you couldn't make a child become a fully fledged doctor, a lawyer, or an artist. And if you were clearer with your definition, even not a merchant chief, as it is said here, with kind of simpler task, you might have a possibility of doing so, because a beggar man is someone who doesn't really have that many things into consideration, quote unquote, and that simply comes because in our society it isn't that much of an open um, position, if it can be called that. Mm, and even less something like a thief, because you don't even know which different types of actions they have to do. And I mean, you can try to understand that some types of things can be taken from a very simple role into something higher, because it is not the same to be an average thief to be a thief who can perform in this day and age um, bank hits like it happened before. Think that nowadays is almost impossible to see happening because of the complexity of the security systems that all the banks in the world nowadays possess. So yeah, it isn't the same in that sense. But I don't know. I did I think the biggest and the most important thing is still to believe in the potential that a child might have, because if you start also neglecting their whole potential because you overfocus yourself on the necessity of giving them other types of tools, you might sadly have to deal with the reality of these childs not being so, I wouldn't simply say expressive, so well spread around, I guess, or so. Yeah, so that's the word. So well rounded when it comes to all the different actions that they might have to perform. But yes, kind of understandable. I would say so. So with this, we are ready to continue. I guess. Let me let me see. I am forgetting something. I will, yeah, I will probably like to go back a little bit. Let me, the other slide. What was it? This one. Um, no, yeah. Nothing that they have not mentioned. I think. Hello.
Senses. That's the impact that he formed in my own specified world to bring them up. And I'll guarantee to take any of them one at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select, a doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chief, and yes, even beggarman and thief. That it's all the environment and a blank slate, and who really knows? But infants are born with some incredible things, and we'll talk about them today. One of them is this experiment from Andy Meltzoff, which is this, that it seems like within moments of birth, infants are equipped with a desire to imitate adults, a desire to imitate, right? And why people have been really impressed by this is if you have that in your genes and in your nature, it's a good way to learn about the world is to imitate people you see around you, right? It's kind of a driving principle. I'll imitate their language, their social mores, right? Okay, so here's what Meltzoff did. Sticks out his tongue, opens his mouth, purses his lips, and here's the infant, 1 day old or a couple days old, tongue out, mouth open, lips pursed. Okay? Now, I should warn you about one thing. These are the greatest hits pieces of that research. People debate about how perfectly this happens, all right? So I was frustrated when my infant came home and I did all this stuff, and she would not instantly do everything she was supposed to do, all right? It's a statistical thing. Because, when you see these pictures, they're showing you the best moments. They have to defend that it happens above chance statistically, but it's not like every expression you make, they copy you, okay? And that's why there's still some debate about exactly what's going on. But they definitely, on average, imitate an adult within a day or two of birth for completely arbitrary, as far as we think, expressions. So it's a very powerful mechanism for learning that appears to be in place. Because there's two ways we could imagine, right, genetically programmed learning. One is that you know the content of it already, but another way is that you just have stuff that makes you a learner, right? So being an imitator is a general way to make you a learner without being very specific to the content. So we talked a little bit about this already, but psychologists are unbelievably brilliant. I think I'm really blown away about how they can figure out what an infant knows and doesn't know, or a young child knows or doesn't know. And they do this indirectly by things like looking time. And you've seen this. I'll give you an example or two, and you'll see some more examples, as a measure of what the baby knows or the young child knows. And of course, if they look longer at something, it could be because they prefer it. And also, if it's based on a memory task, something like you saw something, you see it again, that would tell you there's some sort of discrimination. They can tell things apart based on memory. And then sometimes people will push this memory thing with habituation or familiarization. So if you show something to a baby over and over and over again, they get sort of tired of it. And at that moment, they'll change the stimulus. And they'll see whether the baby gets newly attentive. Now, if it's something that the baby doesn't grasp, they won't get newly attentive. Nothing's changed in their mind. If it's something the baby understands, then they'll say, wow, something interesting is happening, and they'll look longer. So here's an example of, baby getting bored because they're showing something over and over and something new. Whoa, okay, that's the kind of things that people measure. And they, we're doing it loosely here. They measure it pretty carefully. I should tell you, the people who do this kind of research, they'll film it. They'll show to unbiased people like you, maybe judges, okay, to say how long is the baby looking, where's it looking. You don't know what the baby should be looking at or not. So researchers take care to make it not just, that you're convinced in your heart of hearts they're looking more. They film it. They show it to people who don't know what's going on. They try to make it a blind procedure in many ways, the better research. So how do we know things? So even your very young infants look selectively at novel objects. If something's new, even at 1 day, if you show them checkerboards with different size squares, same size, same size, same size, wait a couple of seconds, smaller squares, they look more. That shows you they saw the difference in the squares. They even remember somehow in their mind the difference between the squares, because when you switch it, they start looking more. Something interesting has happened based on perception and memory. Another thing that we've mentioned, I'll just remind you, is that infants almost from birth seem to love to control or provoke their environment. So we already mentioned to you that 20 months old prefer a mobile that responds to their bodily movements. They like things that they control. If they take a 2-month-old and they put a string on their wrist by which they can control a showing of Sesame Street, they kind of like that. And if you stop Sesame Street, they can show anger on their face. Hey, I was in charge here. Who has the remote control now, right? And 4 and 5 months old, a little bit older, remain angry when the video comes back on, because that's not what they wanted. They wanted to control the presentation of the video, right? So infants have this apparent craving to explore and feel like they have some control over their environment at an age when they don't control a lot because of their limited physical capacity. In the first 3 or 4 months, infants explore the world a lot by their mouths. That's why people worry to not leave around things that they will put into their mouth and swallow that are dangerous, okay? Because their visual and auditory systems and their system with their hand are slowly developing. By 5 or 6 months around the world, they start to explore with their hands and their eyes around them as their motor system gets more mature, as their visual system gains acuity. And we already know that infants use social cues to guide exploration. One of the big changes that's happened in the last 10 years, I'd say, in infant studies or child studies, has been a lot of appreciation about the intersection between cognition and social interaction. There used to be like two different worlds. The people who studied language, they would have algorithms and formulas about the language, and then the social people who studied how babies were cute or something, right? But there's been more and more thought that a deep thing in us that helps cognition grow is the social relations that an infant is drawn to parents and caretakers. So for example, a 6-month-old, if their mother, let's say, rolls or pounds a ball, they tend to imitate that action. They follow the eyes of a person, joint attention. The eyes are the windows on the soul. We know eyes mean a lot. Where are people putting their attention? What are they paying attention to? Infants pick up on this very early on. And if somebody looks over there, they look over there. If you look at them, they know your attention is focused on them. And sometimes people will say, because psychologists love to test everything, is it just the way the head is turning? So if you put cover somebody's head, they don't follow it anymore. They know it has to be the eyes, reflecting where the mind is putting its attention, right? It's not the head direction, it's the eyes. Here's something. Infants who are a little bit better at following eyes, either maturing faster or something, also learn language faster. They get words faster and syntax faster. It's as if part of that social interaction is helping to drive the language learning.
What?
So that's true. At following the head direction is the eyes. Here's something. Infants who are a little bit better at following eyes, either maturing faster or something, also learn language faster. They get words faster and syntax faster. It's as if part of that social interaction is helping to drive the language learning. So that's how these social things and language things interact very substantially. And we already said that a 12-month-old will stop at a visual cliff, but if the mother smiles, there they go. Okay, so constant learning that mixes in the cognitive and the social.
Okay. We have. I would believe it is kind of heavy overall. I can see it now being kind of overwhelming. But yeah, so far, one of the main things that it has to be noted is how increasingly complex it all becomes, because you cannot simply observe how many different things play a role when it comes to observing how a child behaves, but also what many things we kind of leave behind in the sense of observing how their different behaviors do play a role, let's say. Because here what we are observing in this particular case is, here, in what is the field of infants realizing the act of exploring the world and such, you can observe and you can see that they have a tendency at first about doing things with their mouth. And for example, there, I might like to comprehend, or I might like to ask, how much of that change from doing it with their mouth to doing it with hands and eyes is created with what was mentioned here before. The nurturing that they have and the different lessons that they were given. Because I will believe that almost anybody, after 100 different occasions in which they are told that, I don't know, putting any kind of object in their mouth instead of simply touching it is bad, anybody who is through that enough times will understand that. Therefore, doing it might as well be not beneficial for them. In this case, it ends up simply or obviously meaning that sadly, people, kids might have lost their capacity because of this environment in which they are raised, but I wouldn't also be capable of properly naming why will it be necessary for a human being to retain something like this. I would observe that the benefits that we have created by changing this type of behavior can be pretty much understood as something beneficial to everybody, because at the end of the day, our actual society isn't really driven around by people utilizing their mouths to experience most of the world, but rather by our hands and eyes. We can interact at first with our mouths. We might give cues to others, and we might be capable of argumentating things as well as tasting food and such. But there is not that much of a necessity of trying to change how everything works around and try to go back into this model of wow, we explore things with the mouth on one hand. On the other, yet there are too many things to say here. Let me go back into the other slide for a second, because it was about learned, yeah. Okay, yeah. Also, what is mentioned on this particular slide, it is how kids want to control things, and how by not having the capacity of doing so, they get angry. I can pretty much observe why something like that would be the case, and I think it kind of becomes apparent when you take into consideration that as a child, what you're trying to do the most is comprehend why things happen the way they do. And if what your prediction tries to be gets fully contradicted, you might as well not have a chance at doing things correctly in a world in which your survival is kind of the primal thing to have, or primal thing to prioritize. So by observing in these cases that the kid loses the capacity of understanding why things are happening the way they are, you can pretty much translate all of this into another, yeah, simply another type, or just a new deviation of the concept of what I was understanding was wrong. Therefore, this one model of the world that I was creating might as well be not worth it anymore to maintain. So I will have to spend my time to swap it all and to come up with a new explanation as to why things are the way they are. And I will believe it ends up being rather irritating also, because as a child you are more prone to experience your emotions more intensely. That that is one of the things that happens. I can't fully remember which one was it. I think it was because you lack such a proper definition of the frontal area of the brain that you can realize how much of a thing it is to not be so expressive about your emotions. Therefore, you are more inclined to express them and all of that. I think so. Sadly, it is like that we end up seeing. Well, I mean, not sadly, simply. Therefore, by having this one condition applied to them, kids can't avoid expressing their emotions more unnecessarily so in those cases. And that is, yeah, that is why also the, you don't have such a capacity of understanding what is social etiquette and all of that, because you don't have that much of a controlling factor when it comes to seeing and fully delving into what is socially acceptable or not. And this can also be concluded into the part of, wow, why are kids so real, quote unquote, when it comes to their opinion, and why do they say things so harshly when there is no obligation for them to do so and such. But yeah, I think that is kind of everything, and in that sense. Yeah, ex- I don't know. I don't know what I did before, because now I am filled with different things to mention. I think it is like a combination of me not streaming enough on one hand, and on the other, having a little bit more of different ideas that can fully keep, yeah, can fully give me the chance of expand on what is being mentioned here and make them even more logical or more understandable for everybody who can follow whatever I am saying. So yeah, all of that is simply to say that, excuse me, but I might want to skim through what was said from this point onwards, just in case. Let me see.
And 4 and 5 months old, a little bit older, a video, right, all over their environment. In the first 3 or 4 months, infants through their mouth and swallow. By 5 or 6 months, a great gains of changes has happened in the last 10 years. I think cognition and language.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. There's something else that this one I forgot. Um, when a child loses their desire to, let's say, do something, it it is as it is mentioned here that the different social cues are the driving factor for their actions. So if a child is no more capable of really doing something because they were told that this thing was negative, not only do they learn that this type of behavior is something that they should correct, but also in the cases of what what gets mentioned later on, um, a child basing their possible interactions with something that is new to them and that is fully unexperienced on the world to them, when things like that also happen, these kids end up learning the necessity of basing their experience on others. In this case, something that gets kind of missed in the way is that sadly, a child doesn't simply stop, let's say, doesn't simply stop having an interest on doing things when they become 12 months old, but rather that when you are in such an age, if things go right in your life, that is something that I think needs to be addressed. If your parents are um, capable enough of being trust for you, when things like that happen, you can base off pretty much a lot of your interactions with the world based on the knowledge that they give to you. Because when it happens that they tell you that something is dangerous, and you have seen before that there are other kind of for you predictions for them, advice based on previous experiences of that thing, is all created simply from observing that the world is in such a way and that they know what they are saying. Therefore, you might as well not risk yourself, but simply follow what they are telling you. And kind of the opposite can happen. I mean, you also have the chance of understanding that if a child doesn't really behave in a way in which um, you want, and you constantly correct them on those things, they will see slowly that things are the way you say, because your actions lead them to believe. Even sometimes with what sadly happens, if what you're saying is not true, as in, for example, if you, I wouldn't simply want to say it like that, but being crude, if you manipulate your child to believe that eating something like chicken is negative for them, you will be restricting their diet. If you remove all the chicken from them, you're kind of closing them off from the chance of experiencing all of this food, not only in the sense of the adventure that is to eat something, but also in the sense of having a proper diet and having a properly distributed consumption of different foods. So it it means that what you did was probably for you, if the justification is good enough, proper, but for them it meant that they believed what you told them to be true because they had no way whatsoever to contrast what you have told them with their own experiences, as they have not even probably tried something like chicken in this case. But yeah, I mean, not only this is applied into the negative, but this is also a big thing that happens, or a big process itself in the maturation of any human being, and that is to realize that your fathers or that your family doesn't hold the whole truth about the world, and that they don't know every single thing. They might have guided you in some things previously, but when you start to confront the reality that is, they don't really know all the things that you have questions for, and they don't really have the possibility of providing for you all the different answers that you are needing, then it is that you suddenly have no more a chance at the really solving kind of the questions that arise from trying to experience the world. But I mean, yeah, that is simply a problem that is born or out of trying to yeah, out of having to deal with the consequence of your family not being the all-knower being that you believed them to be. Kind of those your expectations finding their limits, something like that. But okay, I think so far this is kind of coincidentally a good point to take. Sadly, a tiny break because I might want to go to to an idol break, as we will say here. So, excuse me, but I need my tiny idol break. Excuse me once again. Um, I don't know. I think like 1 minute or so. Give me a second. Okay, we are back. Oh man, the necessities. What a crazy thing to have. What a beautiful thing to have. Anyways, back to here. We were basically at trying to explain what was mentioned all over here. So I'm missing something. I wouldn't say so just in case, but we can still check. I mean, yeah. Let's shortly check.
The windows, eyes are the windows on the soul. We know eyes mean a lot. Where are people putting their
Ah,
attention?
yeah,
What are
yeah,
they
yeah,
thinking?
yeah. Okay, yes. This one concept about how eyes might represent the interpretations that we have about the world and all of that is also interesting enough because I I have yeah, I wouldn't say I had considered them, but simply that I observed these things and I believe a good way to try and put them into perspective is that simply it happens that as as you start to develop a sense of trust on what you observe, and therefore what you observe also is mm, affected by by the perceive, yeah, by the different perceptions that you have based on your family. When you notice that your family is doing things a certain way, you might start to copy them because this all draws back into this notion of you want to survive and such. So, if you observe that your family is capable enough of communicating with one another, and this ends up in return giving them the chance of surviving, you will start to create a desire inside of you of also being capable of communicating. Because sadly, you don't become simply out of nowhere capable of communicating and being therefore someone who can play a role on on anything at all, I will say, and therefore by doing so be an actor in a conversation, but rather you need to understand as many things as you can that are happening in any conversation so that you can, by doing so, mm, then have not simply into consideration but also in your hands the possibility of trying to explain all of the different things that have to deal with this handful pile of concepts, I will say. And yes, it is comprehensible enough on that level, but also the accelerated development towards um, language development itself gets explained with what I kind of mentioned a little bit before. That is, the more you observe something and the more it makes sense for you, the more you can believe that it is necessary for you to develop this one thing as a child and as a baby and such. So the more you have also the capacity of observing things because you learn that by observing you are more and more capable of resolving different questions and different problems that arise from your daily life, the more you start to do so, and the more you do so, the more you, yeah, in a kind of closed feedback type of environment, I will say. The more you do it, the more you realize it is good, and the more you realize it is good, the more you try to do it and such. So, all of these things end up simply looping to show you that you can, by observing, do things, and by doing things that are good, observe even more. So, you become even more prone to all of this combination of actions I will suggest. But yeah, it doesn't really have that much of a deeper layer to it, I believe. So we can simply continue after this one. I I guess I will say so. Let me, yeah. Anyways, let me continue.
Infants pick up on this very early on, and if somebody looks over there, they look over there. If you look at them, they know your attention is focused on them.
Wait,
And sometimes
yeah.
people will say,
Well,
psychology.
well, okay, watch this. Thank you. Thank you for your short explanation.
But if the mother smiles, there they go. Okay, so constant learning that mixes in the cognitive and the social. Now, the epic name in developmental psychology is Jean Piaget, because prior to him, roughly speaking, in the science of child development, people just thought children were sort of boring and dumb. Okay, it's like, they need a lot of attention. Please, finish MIT so we can talk with you intelligently. Okay, all right. So I just people were not that interested. Partly as the world was different in so many ways. There was practically no formal psychology experimentation or thought about what really children's mental lives were like. And Piaget, I have a wrong year there, 1886. Developed he himself was a child prodigy, trained in biology, very early interest in whether categories are in our heads or in the world, tried poetry, worked with Binet on intelligence testing, became interested in patterns of errors and successes. You'll see that in many ways, what he discovered about how a child mind is different than yours fundamentally is based on the patterns of their errors. And he said there's two basic things going on. This is a huge idea. One is assimilation, that you incorporate new knowledge into existing cognitive structures. It's basically ways you think about the world, and new knowledge is added. That's important. But he thought the dramatic thing that happens in infancy and childhood is what he called adaptation, that the fundamental ways in which you understand the world are shifted through development to accommodate new evidence. So there's a wonderful book, if you come across it, called The Scientist in the Crib, okay? But it's a kind of a pun. It's written by scientists who study infants. But the idea is that in a sense, every infant is kind of his or her own scientist, as you were, probing the world and discovering the physical and social laws of the world, okay? Because they don't know them coming in, and they're going to pick up a lot of them, and they're going to probe them, but fail to publish the results. Okay, so Piaget postulated that there was these big stages, what he called the sensory motor age, 0 to 2, where the world is one of what you see and the physical actions, and there's not much representation of ideas or lasting thoughts. And we'll see some examples of these. Between 2 and 7, you start to be able to keep a thought in your mind. You still have an egocentric perspective. You see the world from your view, but not appreciating the views of somebody else. You start to use language. A lot of flimsy discussion about fantasy and reality. I can tell you with my own daughter who you'll meet, she's still working out whether fairies really exist or not. Okay, and this was chaotic because we went to some skating show where there was where Tinkerbell was a human dancing, and that totally made the situation very complicated, right? Because you could tell a cartoon. Okay, all right, so she's still working on that. Concrete, as you get 7 to 11, organized logical thought, still concrete as opposed to sort of abstract, and then you move to more adult-like cognition, which we'll talk about next week. So the idea is from birth to 2 years. You would love to have an infant just tell you, what do I think the world is really like? They have very modest language, of course, right? So they can't tell you what they see. So a thought is they have fleeting, disconnected sensory impressions and motor reactions. It's all, what do I see? How am I responding? That their focus of thought is centered on actions, not things or intentions. And I'll show you that in a very concrete way. That there's no distinction in their mind between things that are stable in the world and transient events. No distinction between themselves and the world around them. It's all just one big sort of mush until they get to until they can have abstract representations that separate these things out. So,
okay. So far, it makes pretty much. I would say so. What? Hello? Hello? Did I disappear? Okay. My bad. So much I would say it makes sense that we will have no necessity to observe child before, because before, not simply before the era of Piaget, it also happened before him that we tried to give more importance to childs and such, but before you really have a proper explanation as to why will you should try to focus on something that is not yourself and those around you in the closest proximity possible. Why would you think that something like a child will have any potential whatsoever of being observed and being discussed in a way in which you can now claim that you gained any benefit by doing so? So, in these cases, it also happens that childs do gain a newer layer of importance when somebody who is willing enough to advocate for them does so in a way in which they show the different advantages that they have. And going through a lot of different things that were mentioned when it comes to the scientist in a crib in particular, and different ideas that every single kid probes a lot the world and such. Even nowadays we are still doing it, and even nowadays we are still, as human beings, doing the same thing, because scientifically speaking we utilize itself the scientific method to test a lot of different behaviors that do occur in the world. Maybe not to such an extent that like childs do, because most of the time, if you have nothing to do nowadays, when you are a kind of fully fledged adult, you engage in activities that only require you to do things that you have already well defined, and that might as well simply have some tiny variations inside of it so that you get a minimal amount of surprise and pleasure out of it, instead of when you are a child you go out of your way to do and to try yourself completely new things and to see how they all end up feeling. So it is good, yeah, to explore the world on one hand. On the other, let me see. Give me a second. What I'm missing? Let me see here. Yeah, there is one particular mention that I don't really comprehend, and that is how it is that as a child you only have the capacity of observing the world so imaginatively, but I will believe a minimally proper explanation is something along the lines that certainly you will have no possibility of believing in something like this to be minimally good for you if you haven't even tried to have it existing, let's say, in that same sense. Because how could you do so without first and foremost almost risking all of these different, yeah, all of these different possibilities to affect you in a way in which it means that why would you try to imagine things if you don't notice how much potential your imagination has to show you the different things that happen in the world? And even more because obviously imagining is a lot more tiresome than simply going yourself and facing the reality and the different consequences of doing things the way you did them. I will say, but yeah, it is still nice and it is still not so bad because of those same reasons. So you gain a lot by being part of those processes and such. And with time, you also learn by this same concept that I mentioned before, lessons given to you by other people that it is certainly beneficial for you. Do not risk so much of yourself trying to see what is good and what is bad, and by also maintaining yourself safe, you can keep experimenting with the world in a way in which you can only put at risk your ideas instead of what you are, and ensure that you live without sacrificing the discovery of something potentially threatening to you for your own life and such. So, in that sense, it all makes, as I said, sense. But, okay, I think that is that for this one point. Let me see later on. Because this is the next one, no? I did we did we hear this? What was the explanation for this one? What was, did I not pay attention? The fuck?
Totally made the situation very complicated,
see.
right? Because you could tell a cartoon. Okay. All right, so she's still working on that. Concrete, as you get
What
7
did I
to
do,
11,
man?
organized logical thought, still concrete as opposed to sort of abstract. And then you move to more adult-like cognition, which we'll talk about next week. So the idea is from birth to 2 years. You know, you would love to have an infant just tell you, what do I think the world is really like? They have very modest language, of course, right? So they can't tell you what they see. So thought is they have fleeting, disconnected sensory impressions and motor reactions. It's all, what do I see? How am I responding? That their focus of thought is centered on actions, not things or intentions. And I'll show you that in a very concrete way. That there's no distinction in their mind between things that are stable in the world and transient events, no distinction between themselves and the world around them. It's all just one big sort of mush until they get to until they can have abstract representations that separate these things out. So,
okay, yeah. Once again, going back into what is mentioned here, then you can take into consideration what was brought before. This concept of imagination itself, if you can't even try to imagine things, how would you believe that they are necessary for you and such? And by doing this same thing, you also suddenly experience the reality of the state of matters being that you will have to risk defining things in a way in which you will end up harmed. And not only that you will end up harmed, but also that you will lose more time by doing so than by not doing so. So, in one sense, you have a kind of an excuse as to why you don't have so many things clear in your head. On one hand, because on the other, it also happens that if you lack the capacity of imagining things and being, as it is mentioned here, in an abstract world full of representations of things instead of simply existing, you can't see what you are and what other things are as different things. Because at the end of the day, everything interacts with everything. A hand interacts with a table, and a table also interacts with a hand. So can you really say that you're not part of the table, if even if you can't control in any way the table? Or even worse, if you are dealing with, for example, let's say a car, how would you not be a car if you, or if a hand is moving a car and the car is moving in the way in which you particularly want to move it? So can you truly say that you are not the car because you are taking action or a hand that you can somehow control is also controlling a car that might as well be you. All of those different things are almost impossible for you to define if you have no way whatsoever of seeing that you are in any way different. And yeah, it makes sense. It simply makes. I think it is kind of negative to say it, but it simply makes sense when you observe it like that. That you won't have that much of a deeper connection with the world. You will simply be another fleeting idea into what all of this reality is and keep being in a state like that until it all reaches its end, I guess. But yes, something like that. I guess we can move on from this. No, let me see.
Until they get to until they can have abstract representations that separate these things out. So, so let's talk about object permanence. So I'm going to show you that you have object permanence just simply by saying, here's my pointer. I need a volunteer. This is so easy that you will not feel scared. I promise. All right, thank you very much. So you see this? Where do you think it is now? Okay, yeah, if I was a really cool teacher who did magic, it would be gone. All right, so, but yes, and it's there. That's object permanence, okay? All right, if you turn your head, you believe it's probably still there, okay? But now, knowing that's going beyond the fundamentals of perception, that's your knowledge, and representing in your head, there's something I don't see, but I know it's there. That is not available to a 0 to 2-year-old. So, for example, if they see a rattle, they feel a rattle, but now if they look away, or if you just put a sheet of paper in front of it, I'll show you a couple of examples, they behave as if the rattle no longer exists. Just like I did in front of you. If you just cover it up, it's gone as if it doesn't exist, because their mind cannot represent what they do not see right in front of them. So out of sight, out of existence, so you can show them a toy they love, and until about 8 months, if you could do this, and they go, oh, they'll start crying, they'll protest, but they won't reach for it, even when it's easily within their reach. Out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't exist. They can't represent in their mind what they don't see. And then there's another one. You'll see a film of this, but let me tell you this, which shows you about actions versus other things. So imagine you hide a toy under one location. The child searches there, finds it. You hide it again in the same location. You encourage the child to search, they find it. They do it 2 or 3 times. Now, in front of the child, you take that same object that you've shown them like this several times, they grab several times, and you simply, in front of them, pick it up and put it over here. And they're viewing everything in full view, just like you did, okay? What do? When it's their turn to grab, they grab here. The wrong place, the place where they grabbed before. Because what's in their mind is the action they did, not the object as an independent thing they can put in their mind. Does that make sense? And I'll show you several pieces of this. So this is called the A, not B effect. I put this A, in the front full view, put it over here, and they reach over here to get it. This is this idea that in their head is not the toy, their head is representing the thing on the right that are reached for, because they don't represent ideas of things, they represent actions that they've done. So here's object permanence. Here's a child, sees a toy they like. You put up in front of them this thing, and tragically, it's disappeared. Okay, it's gone out of existence in the world. Some people have done some sort of NIRS imaging, suggesting that kids who sort of get past this stage are developing some frontal maturation. But I think the most compelling things are the videos of the kids themselves.
Yeah, let's go, copyright. I love them. Oh no, copyright, no. Why do we have to deal with copyright? Anyways, a pretty good explanation, I think, for what this has to deal with the existence itself of a child is also what we kind of mentioned before, and that is sadly, you wouldn't have a necessity of understanding things if you in any way whatsoever didn't see them as something that has any potential interest in your life. And also, yeah, let me fully develop this. It means that not only you have to deal with all of these things, but also that you have to be part of these different worlds of comprehension to see and to try and be part of what has become your now new field of exploration. So sadly, when something becomes comprehensible to you, you can't do things based simply on what objects are. Rather, you realize actions as actions do end in results. And when you are faced with the reality that your actions didn't give you the results that you were searching for, then it is that you can start to be aware that maybe not every single one of your actions is going to give you the desired outcome. And even more, as I think it was mentioned, no, that the more you are prone, not prone, sorry, the more you are faced with things like this, the more you also start to learn that things might as well be out of your, not simply, yeah, reach in the sense of manipulativeness, and that you can't be so in control of everything directly, that you rather should try to imagine things to see to which extent will you have control over the different things or not, on one hand. On the other, something that was rather appealing to me was the explanation of this same idea applied to the different habits that we develop. Because I think I don't know how to explain it, but it simply appeared to me that it has a very similar connection to how we behave when, even nowadays when we are older, towards the different things that do form our habits and the different actions that we realize when it comes to being active in any way towards the different desired things that we do have. As full explanation, we do a lot of things when it comes to au- automatizing our life and making it more predictable for the sake of not having to think so much about it. And what happens, and this was the driving factor for me to think about it, was we get so accustomed to the positioning of different things that we almost end up distressed when we find out those things are not placed where they should have been placed based on our own memory. And it ends up simply meaning that we developed a map, an conscious or unconscious map about ubication of things and a whole array of actions that lead to predictable patterns of results. So when these expectations get subverted, it is that then we are faced with the reality that our whole way of having habits and such is not so engrabbed in reality, engrabbed, how encrusted in reality, let's say. So yeah, something like that, I guess. But once again, let me check. I don't know what else I am missing. Um, well, I think, yeah, this one in particular is very interesting because you can also observe an example itself of what is going on with the child. And sadly, you don't really need that much of an explanation when it comes to that. You can simply observe that um, a child can interact with what they can't grasp as an understandable concept. We are not capable even of, for example, here, talking from a supposed standpoint in which nobody here has any control over magical things. Because we don't have control over magic, we can't do magic itself. We can't be part of a magical process, of a magical intervention, anything like that. Because we don't even see magic as something possible. Therefore, if a child doesn't even see something as being possible, how can they wish to interact with it? Later on, we start to develop different ways in which you see the world and you see the possibilities and such, and you see maybe how trying to interact with it will lead to certain consequences. But that also comes, as it is said here, with the act itself of developing an understanding about all of the world that is preceded by not simply your actions, but furthermore by all of the things created by your actions. as in obviously the consequences of them. So yeah, I think that is kind of it so far. Let's simply continue. I
So let me
guess.
show you another film, again, very cleverly, that René Bayerjean has been one of the leaders in this field, very cleverly showing you what infants sort of grasp and don't grasp. Not only the brilliance of these experiments, I mean, really, but these infants are really trying to figure out the world. They're coming up with hypotheses that, they're confirming, and then when they're broken down, right, they're upset what's going on. So let's move on to age 2 to 7, especially in the early years, so-called pre-operational stage. And one of the coolest things, and we'll try this and see how it goes with some girls in a few minutes, is this idea. So if you see 2 glasses filled with equal amounts of liquid, and you pour one over into a thinner, taller glass, C, which will have more water in it, A or C? The same. All right. Okay. Okay. But not if you're a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old. So it's called conservation of liquid.
What?
So
I mean, okay, it will explain now. I don't have to explain this one, right?
So it's kind of fascinating, isn't it? It's kind of amazing. And it's all, if you do this with a 3-year-old, it's virtually guaranteed they'll do this. I mean, all of you did it all over the world, and in some sense, as far as we can guess, all throughout our species history. So brilliant ways of showing the babies or young children really see a little bit of a different world, than you and I do, okay, as adults. So conversation. So here's another really, I think.
My brother, can you explain the things that you? Oh. Anyways. I at the very least I remember that it was explained before, so I don't have to be that much angry. But yeah, short explanation as to why it happens. When you are so based on the visual cues that you have from the world, you can't see the world and not believe that what you are seeing is completely correct. So if you can't utilize your imagination to, in this case, picture these amounts of liquid being displayed in different shapes and form, you have then no capacity whatsoever of realizing that all of these things do possess the same qualities. So why would the thing that is higher from the other, while also starting at the same point, not be bigger? If you might as well not see how they might differ. Even if one is tinier, the biggest predictor of measures is how tall something is in the most basic sense. That is why also things like standing in front of a bear with your arms raised becomes a menace for them because they are now dealing with something that is even larger than them. So by doing so, by realizing such type of actions, you can notice how close or far away you are from the reality and such, but it is impossible for you to notice also how these things do or do not become the reality that you observe when you can't picture them in your mind. And that is once again the simplest explanation possible to be given. The most detailed yet simple one, sorry. So yeah, continuing, I guess. I hope at this point I hope I didn't skip anything because certainly there were some points that the explanations had skipped that are almost necessary, not simply wow, these experiments are so wonderful. Wow. No, my brother, can you provide the explanations? Thank you.
Okay, as adults. So conversation. So here's another really, I think, very powerful area of research, which is taking perspectives from the view that other people have thoughts and feelings besides yourself and how you interact with them. So, so this is, and people call this idea theory of mind, the idea that you understand that other people out there have their own thoughts, their own feelings distinct from yours, and in the most challenging case, they can even be false beliefs. A person can have wrong information in their head and truly believe it even when you know it's wrong, because you as an adult realize that thoughts are one thing and sort of physical reality is another thing, all right? But that's not what children think. They think there's just one reality. That's why at the very youngest stage, they think if they cover their eyes, right, that you don't know where they are because they think there's one physical reality only, and they don't realize there's another perspective besides their own. So here's a very clever experiment showing you that at 3 months, children code the word in terms of actions, and by 6 to 9 months, they begin to understand intentions. That people out there, animals too, but we'll just focus on people, have intentions and goals in their head. So here's what the experiment they do using this habituation. A person, there's two pedestals here, and a person reaches again and again for a ball. So now, what do you believe the intention is? To reach for the ball, okay? You see it 10 times, the baby's losing interest. Now comes their shocker, right? To get the baby crying or laughing or drooling, get the baby's attention that you can measure by how they respond. And in some conditions, something goes down, and when it goes back up, the person reaches, but now they take the same action. They reach for the left pedestal, but it's a teddy bear. Or in another case, they reach for the ball on the opposite side. Who, depending on their age, sees these two different changes in the scenario as startling? The 3-month-olds are startled when the person reaches for the same object, okay, the 3-month-old. Because in their mind, the only thing that was really happening was reach for the left, reach for the left, reach for the left, and now you're reaching for the right. The action changed. Because the action is independent of intention. It's just what happened, and they're shocked when the person goes for the ball over here. By 6 to 9 months, they're shocked, relatively speaking, when the person reaches for the same action, but now the goal is different, grabbing the teddy bear. It's as if they understand the intention of the person was to get the ball. And these children think the only thing that's happening is physical action, physical action, physical action. So a very clever experiment by this habituation and looking time to show that at 3 months, all you see is actions. And by 6 to 9 months, you start to grasp that people have intentions in their head above and beyond their actions, that govern their actions. So to make it really sort of tricky, there's this very clever experiment that makes, and we'll try it in a few minutes, this way, this so-called Sally Ann problem, because it's been so widely cited and discussed. So you tell a child this story. Imagine there's 2 girls here, Sally or Ann, and Sally takes a ball and puts it in this basket, and then she leaves the room. Ann, who's a little bit of a troublemaker, takes the ball.
Okay, no problem. I mean, we don't have that much more to really go through. So, look comfortably. Maybe my bad. I think I might not be that close to the mic today. Hello, sorry if you hear it. Hello, and I hope you are doing well.
Basket, and then she leaves the room. Ann, who's a little bit of a troublemaker, takes the ball out of here and puts it into this box and closes the box. Here's the big question. When Sally comes back in and looks for this ball, where will she look? And the 3-year-old says, in the box. Now, if she was out of the room, there's no way for her to look that's in the box. But for the 3-year-old, there's not thoughts and reality. There's just kind of reality. Does that make sense? The 3-year-old can't entertain the idea that Sally has in her head wrong knowledge of where this ball is, that she couldn't have known where it is, and she's going to act on the knowledge that's in her head. That's the content of her mind. The 3-year-old says, there's one reality. The ball's over here. I know it. Everybody knows it. What else is there to even think about? That makes sense? But the typical 5-year-old will say, Sally will look in the wrong place. She'll look in the basket because she'll look in the wrong place compared to where the ball is now because she believes it's there. She has the wrong idea in her head. That ideas can be independent of physical, observable things in the world. This is a universal finding, man. I'm going to have to change my setting. Sorry, your handout has this. In practically every country where they've tested this, 3-year-olds don't have a theory of mind. 5-year-olds do. Turns out, and you could take a guess, the older sibling you have, the younger you become at getting a good theory of mind. What's your guess? Nobody really knows what the answer is, but what's your guess? The more siblings you have who are older than you, the younger, by some number of months, people tend to show that they can understand that people have all kinds of thoughts and beliefs in their head. What's your guess? Yeah.
They may have gone through versions of the Sally Ann problem themselves at that time.
They may have been tortured by their siblings. But on top of that, the intuition is, and we don't really know, this is hard to prove, they're living in a world because they have older siblings who do unkind things to them, who have superior powers over them physically. They're much more socially, have to figure out what's going on to survive happily and make their way in the world, right? The big 5-year-old is like, he or she is like dominant, and the 2-year-old is like trying to steer around, like, what does that 5-year-old think? How will I not get into trouble with that 5-year-old and my mother and my father, right? A younger sibling is more social pressures to figure out what's going on and steer your way around and not get in trouble with your older siblings. I'll just say, we'll come back to autism. I'll just say.
What? What? Welcome back to autism. Yeah. What? No. That threw me off. Anyways. What? The point itself here is, I think you can pretty much envision once again, theory of mind as this whole concept of you can imagine things in a way in which all of those events that you envision and you are capable of picturing happen or not. In a very practical way, you will understand that something like the Sally and Anne experiment will be so conclusive is because you can observe that the child's, yeah, the 3-year-old child simply put into words what they are observing and don't really give it too much of a thought, and you can't envision in any way what you're seeing beyond just saying what has happened and what you comprehend. But later on, with time, as you become more fledged as an individual, you now gain the capacity of deciding if these things are the way you picture them or not. And by doing so, then it is that you can also play with the whole ideas of what things are known by whom or not. And to expand this even more, when you take into consideration that you have to constantly face the reality, not only by yourself but also by those who surround you, and you have in this case a sibling who is close, yeah, of an age similar to yours, what you learn is also that, or what you're faced with, is the reality that things that you know are somehow not transferred to their minds as you would have guessed that it happened. And the same thing happens to you. Things that they know don't instantly transfer to your mind. So you are even more having to deal with the reality that things of that sort are shockingly different than what you expected. So you get more and more proofs that things aren't completely intertwined between themselves. Therefore, you have to exert efforts into seeing reality a certain way and being part of reality a certain way. So, Italy is certainly, I would say, an interesting adventure, but it also comes with or at the cost of you being faced and having to deal with itself with reality, as in learning that things are not how you pictured them before, and overcoming the difficulty of accepting that you were wrong before. Yeah, I think something like that is pretty understandable so far. I don't know how it transitions into autism in any way whatsoever, but we might see. That's it, I guess. And
What's going on and steer your way around and not get in trouble with your older siblings. I'll just say, welcome back to autism. I'll just say a word about this now.
welcome back.
You hear a lot about it. The current guess is that it's approximately 1 out of every 140 children, a shocking increase in numbers to what people believed it was many years ago. Mysteriously, there's many more boys than girls with autism. Estimates are 4 to 1 or 10 to 1, range all there. It's hard to know for sure. We'll talk more about that. But autism is defined by 3 things: a sort of weakness or deficit in social interaction. Children with autism or adults have difficulty in social interaction, in communication, and they have lots of repetitive behaviors that can be difficult to help in interactions with others. And when people test theory of mind in children with autism, it's typically delayed by 5 or 6 years on average for those children who can take the test at all. They have a very slowly developing, very delayed theory of mind and understanding what's in the content of the thoughts of other people. And that's considered one of the sort of biggest challenges, is how they relate to other people, understanding what the other person's thinking and feeling. Okay, so just for a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you a video, and then we're going to try. So,
copyright, my beloved. Anyways, I think it is pretty much understandable how people with autism might not have the capacity, or child with autism might not have the capacity of developing their minds to the level to which they can now see things as you do, in the sense that you can't picture things being so incredibly different for everyone else when you have to deal first and foremost with such a different worldview yourself, one which has so many consistently different layers to what is getting told to you that reality is, that before anything else you have to explain that to yourself, then you have to be capable of wording that to other people, and by having those both things happen at the same time, then it is that you can also try to put into this whole existing network of concepts now also the layer of maybe this all is not only for me to comprehend, but might carry a little bit more of ideas beyond what I supposedly know. So yeah, I think it is interesting that somebody with autism might be so delayed in the comprehension of this, but it isn't um, unexpected, I guess. Yeah, yes, simply like that.
The biggest challenges to Piaget have been this idea that there's these distinct stages of thought, that your mind shifts literally how it's constructed and understands the world, and that people thought that the process is much more continuous than Piaget had suggested. And here's one compelling example of that kind. So this is the A not B experiment. There's two food wells and something of interest to this infant. The 7-month-old looks at the toy here. It gets covered up. And the toy, this is sorry. He is placed in B. And B it's one of the two wells. He continues to look at B when both are covered. He knows the toy is over there. And the toy has been placed over and over again in A, all right? So he gets an A not B error. He has the action. And even though he sees the toy is placed there, it's covered up, he's looking where the toy is. When it's time to reach, he goes to this well. So this is the A not B error. A part of his mind that guides action is stuck and guides what he reaches for, right? But obviously another part of his mind knows perfectly well where the toy is, right? So it's not as if it's all of one or all of the other. His mind is representing that there's a toy down there. But the part of his brain or mind that guides his action is still stuck at this early developmental stage. It's as if he were two ages, right? One guiding where his eyes goes, and one guiding the ultimate action of where his hands goes. And as he gets a little older, his eyes and hands will go in the same place. Okay, last couple of things about how infants are mathematicians.
Okay, then before continuing, I guess you can pretty much also explain that by trying to add the theory of a child does play with the world that they have around them. So you will try to see that if a child observes that things supposedly are a certain way, why would they spend their time predisposing themselves to believe that what they think about is true if they can instead deal with reality instead, and they can face the consequences of their different errors in that sense. Therefore, a child might try to interact with a world with which they don't know the different reactions that it is going to have, rather than just act on what they supposedly know, as in what is they don't even know what the risk might be, so why not do it? It is pretty much understandable that they will reach for something that they don't know what it contains instead of simply going for the expected object. I mean, if I try to add a little bit more of deepness into it, you don't even know what is on the. Yeah, okay. Here. The child itself might not even know, because you know that the toy is here as a child, but you don't even know what the hell is over here, so you might as well want to see first what is over here, and you want as well want to experience what is contained in this side, because you don't even know what is the possibility of that. So you do that, and you now interact with the world, and you know, fill your conscious mind with more knowledge about it instead of simply remaining in your place and not having the chance of exploring even more. Now, when you develop yourself even further more into reality, or in time, sorry, you can grasp reality in a better way, because not only you have the chance of seeing what you can observe at first hand, but you can also deal with what you can picture in your mind. So if I wouldn't simply know this, I guess I will need a little bit more of comprehension about this. But if you can picture that this well has nothing from where you are as a child, you might as well not even want to interact with it, because you already know that it has nothing for you of interest. on the other hand, you might try to go for this shiny toy that you want to keep interacting with because you don't even know which type of uses it will have. So the more you can further down develop your intelligence and your capacity, as it is the main topic here, of picturing things in your mind, imagination, all of that end up giving you the chance of interacting with the world in different ways. The consequences are almost the things that you are going to pursue the most if you don't even know what lies behind them. And simply, the newest experiences are going to be what you're going to go for if you already know what is going to happen. So yeah, it's something like that, I guess. Moving on.
Because of course we focused on language or social thought, but the ideas of counting and ultimately arithmetic or math also come out of children's minds. And a very clever experiment, and I'll show you two of them, that shows even at 6 months, infants are starting to prepare themselves to become mathematicians. And here's how they begin the counting. They're shown displays of 3 objects or 2 objects, and then they hear 2 sounds like boom, boom. And where do they look? They tend to look at the one with 2 objects. So this is pretty impressive. They're counting the 2. They're relating something in sound to something in sight that's arbitrarily related, but that shares the numerosity, right? And if they get boom, 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 3 boom sounds, then they go, okay, now I like to display with 3 things. They understand in some level 2-ness and 3-ness. And so you start to have the basis of having numbers. And not only that, Karen Wynn at Yale has shown quite cleverly, not only do infants have numbers, they can do a little bit of subtraction and addition. So here's the experiment she does. She places an object in a case, the screen comes up, now comes a second object, and the hand leaves, okay? The screen drops, and there are 2, 1 plus 1 equals 2, and the infant is, okay, no big deal. But if the screen drops, and there's 1, the infant is startled and looks longer. Wow. And they can do it the other way around. They can do subtraction as well, okay? So 1 plus 1 equals 2, and if there's 1 left by the trickery of the kind you saw earlier, they're disturbed that the addition has not occurred correctly, or the subtraction has
Okay, what?
not occurred correctly. And there's kind of a debate, this is the last slide, about, and here's the core idea, though, which is this, that our minds afford us, by evolution, counting up to about 4 objects in the world. And then many animals do that as well. That sort of, has to develop a little bit, but we have a lot running in us. So that infants can do, because of course if you give 77 booms, they don't look for the display with 77 versus 78, okay? Or they can't do that, okay? So they can operate in the world of 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. And then they discovered that there's been a series of studies in tribes that are relatively isolated in different parts of the world, where they in their language, they only have words for 1, 2, and 3, and everything after that is really described as many or a whole lot. They don't have words for 5 and up. There's no word in their language, okay? Because they've never needed it, apparently, okay, in the world they live in. So they go to them and they have them do little counting tasks. And as soon as they get beyond about 4, they get very inaccurate. It's as if the mind naturally can represent about 4 things in the object world, 4 things in the counting world, maybe because of that. And after that, everything is a cultural invention of higher level mathematics. It builds off 1 to 4, but you don't have it unless your culture teaches it to you, or your culture invents it. So, and there's been brain imaging studies too, suggesting that counting 1 to 4 is very different in the brain than exact mathematics beyond the number 4 or 5. That's all culturally learned and invented, based on a sort of innate 1 to 4 capacity.
Okay. That's everything, I guess. And yeah, that's what I was going to say, basically. That there are also tribes that have different counting systems that are not based simply on what we have complex type of numbers, but rather, okay, I have 1 units, 2 1 units, 3 1 units, 4 many units, and many units. You can't, and that is, I think that was explained, I'm pretty sure. The more you deal with very complex ideas, the more you have to develop and see almost a necessity about developing your conscious mind when it comes to picturing things that are out of your immediate realm of comprehension. And it doesn't simply mean that you are now capable of observing the world as it is. No, you certainly have to possess enough reasons to do so. And if in your society, in this case, as it is taught by us, by the different tribes, you experience that counting to higher units is not necessary. Why would you in any way try to create something like that as long as nobody finds a necessity for that? So these type of experiences bring you the capacity of now discerning if what you have in hand is good, is necessary or not. And also, the more you can interact with all of these concepts, the more you can be part of a higher understanding, and you can be part of a world in which more things start to accolade all into a better vision of the world itself, because you can grasp more, yeah, you can grasp more pictures in your mind about different situations in life that are going to drive you to better conclusions about the world in which you live. And this can be, for example, truly exemplified by one of the easiest tests, that is, you can't picture properly in quote unquote full detail more than around 3 people. If you try to do 10 people, you're already going to be struggling, because you can keep the image of 3 people at the same time being all fully detailed. You start to lose detail the moment in which you pass on from one to another. And if this keeps happening and you keep finding how similar things of this same sort try are tried by you, you will have to face that the bigger the number, the less you're capable of picturing it. It is, for example, you can't in any way whatsoever really have 100 people existing in your mind. You might as well be minimally capable of projecting colors if you are truly advanced with your imagination, but there is no real way in which you can have 100 fully detailed people existing all at the same time inside of your mental image of anything. So, yeah, it is crazy, I guess, but it is still very easy to understand. There is no such necessity, at least nowadays, for us to have any of that sort of things happening. So yeah, I guess that is simply like that, and that is also the end of the lesson today. The end of the lesson, the lecture, everything so far. We we dealt with all of the things that we have to deal with. So that means that I guess we are done. How much did we take? I thought we took like 2 hours. I, I guess not. I guess kind of surprised by that. But well, we did our job here. We finished the lesson. That is the most important thing here. So we did well enough in that sense. I should copy this link to not lose it later on. And well, let's see. Can we? Yeah, I think this is everything so far. Um, it it has been kind of weird to notice how many ideas I I had all about different things. So yeah, I guess we are simply going to live here. Damn, I didn't expect that at all. But well, we had still a great time, and that is the most important thing. Oh man, now problem. There might as well be once again too many options. What a nice thing it is. Choose paralysis. I okay. I ca- I don't even know who I read last time. Let me go for the. Um, I think who I think I narrated. Let me do this. Anyways, we did our job. That is the most important thing here. We did some thinking. That is a precious gift to have, and that is certainly an amazing thing to go for. So, as always, let me, yeah, while we wait for the ride, as always, Thanks for everything. Thanks for being here. Thanks for lurking. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all of the precious things that we have. I I will try to, to be here tomorrow. I don't know if I will be even alive, but I will try to be here tomorrow. Well, so far we had a nice one. We had a very good one. We will see what we have in store for the next occasion. And until then, please keep yourself safe. Do your your deeds. Work on what you have to work. Remember to stay hydrated. Remember to rest. And well, even if we don't get to see each other, at the very least, we have a great one here. And we can say that we are happy with what happened so far. Because certainly we do things that feel nice. So well, once again, thanks for watching, for looking, for watching the world, for everything. In particular, thanks to Savannah, thanks to Mimento, thanks to Bunkum, and thanks to Milo. Now, I didn't say anything. We're going to raid into Fufi, who is playing Doctor. I think I entered into Fufi before. I think so. That will be something certain interesting to do. Once again, thanks for everything, people. Keep yourself safe, and until next one. See you, everybody. Thanks.